Hey everybody, welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean, my pronouns are he, him. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide, Better Living.
And my name is Megan Kearns, my pronouns are she, her. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
So, welcome to the show. In addition to this being a podcast, we also sell Tupperware. But
we do?
No,
Yeah.
we don't. It's Amway.
Up.
It's Amway, the podcast. So anyway,
no, not Amway. That's a cult.
I know. We have 3 movies tonight, as we usually do. But before we get to those, we just wanted to tell everybody, patrons, non-patrons alike, over on the Patreon page, patreon.com/spoilerpiece, this week's exclusive audio, we're talking about Richard Curtis's 2009 movie Pirate Radio, also known as The Boat That Rocked. It's a lively, fun conversation. I'm giggling about it now. And if you're a $5 patron or up, it's available to you. And if you're not a patron, please consider becoming one, because it is joyful over there on the Patreon page, or at least I think it is.
It can be.
I had a blast.
Yeah, it can be, yes. So anyway, tonight's movies, in the order we shall be discussing them, we have the documentary My Name is Pauli Murray, a movie called Dating and Ampersand, Dating in New York, and James Wan's Malignant, so or Malignant if you prefer. So the first movie we're going to talk about tonight is My Name is Pauli Murray. The IMDb one-sentence summary goes like this. A look at the life and ideas of Pauli Murray, a non-binary black lawyer, activist, and poet who influenced both Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Thurgood Marshall. That is accurate.
Yes.
That is an accurate description of the movie and of her as a person in one sentence.
Yes. And actually, there is some discussion in the film about Pauli Murray's pronouns. Most people refer to Pauli Murray with she, her pronouns. Although there are some, I think mainly queer people that talk in the film that say they either use they or just refer to Pauli as Pauli, which I appreciate that they include that in the discussion, because they don't know. They didn't have a chance to ask Pauli Murray what Pauli's pronouns are. So there's some interpretation there. But yes.
And you get the impression kind of toward the end of the movie when she is having... I don't know how you would describe it, when she's teaching at Brandeis and she's sort of reacting to the way that black students are being activists there, and how her kind of old school way of thinking, I wonder if she thought about pronouns. There's no way to ask her, or them. So it's just, it's kind of amazing watching this movie. I had never heard of Pauli Murray.
Yeah, me neither. And I think that's what's great about the documentary is it calls that out very early on. Look, you've probably never heard of Pauli Murray, and that is bullshit because you should have.
Yeah.
And really, it is the message that's communicated across the documentary, and communicated well, I think. This is someone you really should know, because their, legal arguments that they made were fundamental to achievements in American law that have, impact today.
Yeah. And the kind of amazing thing is she does everything they did in their life happens like 15 to 20 years before some dude gets a hold of it and makes an argument with it, which is another part of the story. That not only was she discriminated against because of the color of their skin, but also because, she presented as a woman. So she was kind of getting it discriminated against, not kind of, she was being discriminated against doubly.
Of course, due to intersectionality. Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was just, basically she couldn't win. But just the idea that, okay, I'm kind of have this, I don't know if I'd call it tragic. They're orphaned at an early age. Mom died of, was it cancer, Evan? Some kind of, or a cerebral hemorrhage? It was something.
It was a cerebral hemorrhage, and then Pauli's aunt
took her in.
Yes. And
Pauli's, right.
Yeah, and that was an interesting story unto itself, because Pauli, nothing but supportive, and understanding, and like just like it was like a picture of what you would hope for any parent, like in terms of being supportive of Pauli throughout Pauli's life, and like pushing and trying to get, you know, the absolute best, you know, education, just the absolute best of everything.
Yeah. Total dotage and support, which nice to see in any family setting. But just the scope of Pauli's life, and Pauli's aunt took her to school at a young age, younger than all the other students, and by the end of the school year, Pauli knew how to read and write and was, you know, 4 years old, 5 years old, but as educated as 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, because it was like one of those one-room schoolhouse kind of places. And education just became kind of Pauli's thing. Went to, I think, the undergraduate
Hunter
degree
College,
was from Hunter, right?
Then went on to I'm trying to think, Howard for law school.
Oh,
and
Howard.
Then a master's
got the
in
law degree
law
at Howard.
from, was it Berkeley? Yeah.
And then taught law in Ghana before being essentially kicked out for being, they don't use the word subversive, but Pauli mentions in the notes, like meticulous note keeper and archiver of their own story. Just the extent of material that Pauli had documenting everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Like 135 boxes.
So extensive. So
at the Schlesinger Library, which is where Pauli's archives live. And that was something that was in Pauli's will, last wishes, was that, you know, all these documents, all these papers and things would be turned over to a place where people could reference them and access them.
Yeah. Had an almost lifelong correspondence and friendship with Eleanor Roosevelt, you know, just
cross paths with.
Yeah. Informed Thurgood Marshall's arguments before the Supreme Court. I mean, basically, one of their professors from Howard says, "Oh, Pauli, we totally like went back and got your thesis and cribbed the arguments from it to like do Brown versus Board of Education."
Yeah, I thought that was amazing, and the film does a good job of setting up context. So, like, there's a situation where Pauli was on a bus coming from somewhere in the north to somewhere in the south. I think it was New York to North Carolina, and there was an incident in Virginia where Pauli refused to go to the back of the bus and to sit in a seat
that was broken.
Yeah, and so Pauli and I think her cousin or some relative, they were arrested and thrown in jail, and so then they tried to sue to end segregation, and they ended up in a shit situation where the judge like dismissed the part of the case on segregation. But, you know, like the movie does a good job of setting up the context of like this incident happened like 15 years before Rosa Parks, and like, you know, Pauli staged a sit-in 17 years before the Woolworth sit-in, you know, and made this argument that ended up being, you know, cribbed for Brown v. Board of Education like 10 years before that happened. So it does a good job of kind of setting up the context and how Pauli was such a trailblazer on so many fronts. And like, I think it's, you know, fascinating. We find out that Pauli was a lawyer, a poet, and then later a priest in the last act of their life.
Church.
They became an Episcopal
went to seminary for 4 years.
Became an Episcopal priest.
and then just like started teaching the good word. I mean, wow. To the point that it's so inspiring, Pauli just wanted to help people, wanted to be, you know, wanted to do right for herself and et cetera, but also toward the end of Pauli's life just became more compassionate and generally, you know, and that's sort of what the theological bit was about. And watching that, I was kind of like, you know, maybe I should go to the seminary and just help people. I don't even believe in God, but why not? You know, so be a lot more interesting than just sitting around worrying all day. So anyway,
yeah. So this was a really informative documentary. I thought it gave a really great portrait of Pauli Murray's life and really educated me, gave me some much needed education about a person who is of, to quote Bill and Ted, great historic significance.
Yeah.
Or a personage of great historic significance that I absolutely should have known about, but didn't through various things. And you know, it's like they have an interview, or they have some interviews with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and they're like, she did reference Pauli's argument in, you know, in her the I'm trying to remember the landmark case off the top of my head, but the case where she successfully you know, the ruling was that, you know, couldn't discriminate on the basis of sex, gender. She quoted Pauli Murray and like showed the screenshot of like the brief that
giving
she wrote
credit to her,
or whatever that directly references.
Oh, it's read, v, read.
Yes. Yeah.
That's it.
But giving credit to Pauli Murray for it, unlike Pauli's male counterparts who did not.
Shocking.
So, yeah. What a surprise. And Ginsburg is in the documentary. You know, just kind of always fun to see Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
A decent chunk too, more than I expected to see her in like interviews. Like they even had her commenting on, you know, when Pauli decided to go to the seminary, and I think RBG had some quote. It was like, "Yeah, I always knew that Pauli was religious, but I never quite got it." Something like that. It was really funny.
So yeah, I just thought it's just such a fascinating human being that it's a shame. I can totally believe that I'd never heard of Pauli Murray before I saw this movie. The reason I wanted to see this movie is because I read the description, which I don't usually read description. I was like, of course I want to see this. Like, this sounds amazing.
I have a question.
Sure.
So you guys touched on it, but and I will be watching the documentary, so I will obviously see this for myself too. But you guys have definitely piqued my interest even more to see this. But I'm curious, I'd love to hear more about the documentary's discussion of their gender identity and their queerness.
Yeah. First of all, I want to apologize for going back and forth on pronouns, because they do that in the movie too. And we were talking about it. I'm just kind of getting twisted around, so I'm sorry. But there's a section toward the beginning of the movie when they're exploring a relationship Pauli had with a woman whose name I can't remember. And
Peggy Holmes.
Thank you. And they were together, and how it's described in the movie is Pauli kind of thought of themselves as the man in the relationship, and Peggy was the woman. And Peggy, as much as she loved Pauli, couldn't quite see them in that way and ended up leaving them. And it made Pauli distraught. I think she had, I think hospitalized for depression after that, right?
Yeah. And they did say that Pauli was kind of in and out of the hospital for mental health, depression issues. I don't know like the full extent of like how in and out that was, but there was a section in the documentary where they talk about I think the biographer, the person who did a biography on Pauli Murray, said that there was a whole box or set of paperwork that was labeled sexuality, and you know, she went through and read all of the stuff about Pauli Murray's life, and like I think she was kind of integral to talking about some of those aspects of Pauli Murray's life, but then also was talking about the kind of like struggle to like, this is a biography, should I include it? But it's her it's Pauli's personal life. Should I include it? Should I not include it? I don't know. It's kind of important. It's kind of essential to Pauli's identity.
Yeah.
And so there's good perspective there, and then there's also I think some good perspective. I don't remember their name. I think Dolores was the first name. They were basically the head of the Pauli Murray was it a foundation or I'm trying to remember, but it was like an organization dedicated to Pauli Murray's like life and work. And they talked about being a trans queer multi-race person and how much Pauli's life and work was an influence to them. And so there were trans and queer perspectives of people talking in both about Pauli's life, identity, but then also just like about Pauli in general. So that was kind of like how they explored that perspective through like Pauli's relationships, but then also through commentary from people who like, you know, could speak better to that identity and like that life.
And Pauli talks about it directly because a lot of the references come directly from Pauli's notes and letters to physicians about, I don't remember whether it was described as my problem or my situation or whatever it was, but extensive documentation.
Yeah, and there was a really tragic piece in this that Pauli always felt like they were a man and felt like they had some biological part of them that would prove that. So like they talk about a situation where Pauli finally got to have exploratory surgery and was like thinking that they would find like male reproductive parts in their body. And it was like, no, Pauli just had like appendicitis and they removed Pauli's appendix. But there was just something so tragic about this idea of going to doctors and trying to get answers and you know, either having they show some of the letters back and forth, like a doctor saying like, sorry, like medical science just doesn't get this, or there's no like explanation for
it's
this.
Very binary.
That's so interesting too, because there's so many people who are intersex. So that's interesting to think that it is so binary in this way, because I mean, so many doctors know that gender is not binary. But anyway, I digress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know. I don't know if the point is that I, as a doctor, don't believe there is such a thing as intersex, or you're not intersex. I actually, that doesn't make that clear in the letters. But the point is, though, that Pauli sought a solution for this for years and years and years.
And clearly had body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, Evan,
well, you guys have sold me on seeing the documentary. I mean, I already wanted to see it.
Yeah.
Because I always want to see documentaries about trailblazers, especially queer icons.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you guys did a great job selling it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's done really well, and it's very respectful while also not being like blowing smoke up your ass. It's
right. Mm-hmm.
It does cast a critical eye, especially during Pauli's time at Brandeis. So it's just kind of fascinating in that way. Anyway, Evan, do you have anything else to add?
Well, I would say, I know in the past we've talked about that I don't always love talking head documentaries, and this is mainly a talking head documentary, but I did like it. I think that the story is well told. I think they kind of explore a lot of like the nooks and crannies of Pauli's life story, and so I think in that way it's really well done, even though I don't always love talking heads. I think one of the aspects of the documentary that I really enjoyed was there's moments where you get to read Pauli's poetry, and they just kind of like let music play and let you just kind of like read the poetry on like it kind of like reveals it like bit by bit. It's not like they just like slap a title card on screen and you just have to like read it all at once, but there's kind of like an animation that comes through where you're like listening to the music and you're seeing the words like displayed in a kind of cadence, which I thought made them that much more powerful. So I liked the bits of the documentary that had actual quotes from Pauli Murray, so you could kind of get a deeper sense of who they were.
Yeah. And you see Pauli on film a lot being interviewed and hear Pauli's words directly. So that's also quite helpful.
Yeah, but the footage is very like grainy and distorted. I don't know what it was shot on, but it's not in good shape, unfortunately.
Not bigger than 16 mil, I'll tell you that. Probably 8 mil. I don't know. Considering when it was shot. So anyway, that's My Name is Pauli Murray. Oh,
I just want to chime in and say that we got a comment on this from one of our friends of the show and listeners, Max Coville, who said that he also really enjoyed the documentary when he saw it at Sundance, and he was looking forward to our thoughts.
Oh, good.
Max, please feel free to tell us how wrong Evan and I are. No, don't do that.
Glad you enjoyed it too, Max.
Yeah. So that is My Name is Pauli Murray. Moving on, unfortunately, to Dating in New York. Ooh, boy.
So before we dig in, I just have to say that the director and writer, Jonah Feingold, liked our tweet that we were going to be talking about this and hoped we enjoyed the film. Feel very badly for the conversation that's about to unfold.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. So Dating in New York is a bad movie. And here's the one sentence IMDb description. Once upon a time in New York City, ellipses, they swiped right.
Yeah. This is a rom-com that is neither rom nor com. It is it's a movie I've actually been worried about talking about, only in that I was worried I might not have enough time to dissect all the things that are wrong with it.
Well, first of all, it is almost a carbon copy of the two No Strings Attached and what's the other one with Justin Timberlake?
Friends with
Benefits. I mean, it's those two movies, except the characters are younger and it's now instead of 15 years ago. And it has this intrusive narration by Jerry Ferrara.
Yes, Turtle from
Entourage, who plays the doorman in the main character's building. Milo, played by Jabuki Young White. The other main character is Wendy, played by Francesca. I don't know how to pronounce this last name, Reale, from Stranger Things, I guess. And so the premise is that these two swipe right on some dating app. You know, swipe right means I like someone. They meet up, they bone. They're kind of like, oh, you're kind of cool. And then they don't like talk for a while. And then Wendy texts Milo and's like, we need to talk. And this is one moment that I thought was kind of interesting. It's like, it's all lowercase. Your text was all lowercase. It had punctuation. I'm like, yeah, that is serious, isn't it? And then they decide, even though they like each other enough to like sleep with each other and kind of enjoy each other's company, they're just going to be like fuck buddies because the screenplay sort of demands it.
Right. She's drawn up a contract, a friends with benefits contract that he's supposed to sign, which I don't even know why he agrees to it, because he already is kind of showing signs and kind of indicating like, I'm not looking for that. So it's weird that he agrees to it in the first place. But then it's also weird in that the contract itself doesn't really get much mention for the rest of the movie. It kind of is like there and it's signed and it's this underlying agreement and then it's gone.
Yeah. And then I'm not sure why these two like each other. I mean, because neither of them is very interesting, and interesting is a bad word.
No, but you're right. I think one of the fundamental problems with this movie is that I was more interested in the side characters.
The two best friends.
The two best friends. To me, they had chemistry. They weren't incredibly well drawn, but I found them interesting. I enjoyed watching them on screen together, and I only cared about what was going on. I didn't care about Milo and Wendy. Some of that is like that their characters are just so thin. I'm like, so we know that Milo is like kind of dabbling and trying to be a comedian, but we don't know if he has any other job. We don't know what Wendy's job is. Like we know so little about either of these characters. And like, they also don't have chemistry. And I think they're mostly the Milo character. I think he's giving a bad performance, but then I think they're also in scenes together where it seems like they're acting in different scenes. Like they don't even seem like they're syncing up in a way.
So I completely agree with everything you just said, Evan. I have to chime in and say that the reason why, Jesse and Hank, the two best friends, the reason they have such great chemistry, I'm pretty sure due to my Instagram sleuthing, that they are a couple in real life.
Uh-huh. Well, that
so
makes
whether
sense.
they started dating after this or before this, I'm not sure, but they clearly seem to have a lot of chemistry off screen.
Yeah,
too.
especially
they got it.
Jesse. I mean, Hank is good in his part, but Jesse is like, the moment she pops up on screen, it's like, oh, I want to spend more time with her, because she calls them out immediately on the dumb stuff they're doing, and then she encourages Milo to go talk to this woman at the bar, and then she gives him a bunch of shit when he chickens out or whatever, and it's fun, for those 3 or 4 minutes. It's a good time. And every time she pops up on screen with Hank, it's like, good, they're here. Oh no, now they're gone. So
I kind of agree, but I also think that I think her acting is very much like, I'm acting, which kind of drove me nuts. But I will agree with you that the two of them are definitely much more interesting, and she is more interesting. The thing that kept taking me out of it, though, is that the script is so not good. And it also, if you know rom-coms and you love rom-coms, and especially rom-com TV shows like I do, there are so many quotes that are ripped directly from other works. Like, there's a Sex and the City quote, there's a Parks and Rec quote. I'm like, what's going on here?
There's the Harry Met Sally kind of moments that they try to.
This is a complete ripoff of When Harry Met Sally, and not a good one.
Yeah. Well,
and also, were all of the exterior scenes at Bethesda Fountain shot on the same day? Because what are the chances that every time you meet somebody at a different time of the year, it would be fall and raining? That's my question.
Yeah. I question this movie's love for New York too, because I feel like it's trying to, like, in some ways claim that it's a love letter to New York, but I feel like it has like very little affection.
I agree.
Despite the fact
I think it has a lot of disdain.
Yeah, it's like a lot of like passive aggressive comments about New York. I don't know, and then it just doesn't feel like it enjoys New York or takes advantage of the setting to do anything fun or interesting. Like, there's a moment where he jokes like, only in New York we could like make out in front of a trash pile and it'd be romantic. And I thought, like, the perfect opportunity to have someone else throw another bag of trash on the pile or hit them with the trash. Like, nope. Nope.
And that is kind of a true line, by the way. I mean, it can be romantic kissing in front of garbage in New York, having lived there for 14 years. Sometimes you got no choice. Right. Sometimes you got roommates at her place, roommates at your place. You're like, all right, we'll go stand by the garbage.
Yeah.
Not really,
we get the Harry Met Sally. They're both talking to their friend at the same time, except this one, the twist is that they're FaceTiming, but they're in the same room across from each other.
Yeah.
Jesse and Hank, the friends.
I also thought Katie from 7F was more interesting than the main characters. And she's in like 2 scenes.
Oh, I did not. But I can see why you said that, or why you think that. Yeah.
Well, just because like she's got something to do, That's
true. That is true.
Like,
that is true.
The big problem, aside from the fact that, I mean, the whole reason, forget about the chemistry for a moment, which we've already agreed does not exist. Milo and Wendy don't have anything to do except wait for the script to get them together. Like, to Evan's point earlier, we know that Milo is a stand-up comedian. They say what Wendy does for a moment, but I don't remember what it is. It's like data analyst or something. I don't know.
Right.
And they do make a point of showing Milo bombing at a stand-up gig, which I sort of appreciate that. Okay, he's young. He's at a stand-up gig. He's bombing. Good. And she's there being supportive, laughing at his jokes that don't work. And he's doing that thing where he's explaining the jokes to the audience. But other than that, it's like, what? Seriously, what do they see in each other? And
then later she says she's moving to California, and then they just abandon that idea entirely.
Yeah,
completely.
And then they piss all over the whole thing at the end when Jerry Ferrara, as Cole the doorman, says, because they split up. She breaks up with him. She annuls their contract, even though she doesn't say that because they never mention the contract again. And they end up at Jesse and Hank's wedding as guests. And then they get together on the dance floor, and Jerry Ferrara's like, blah, blah, blah. And they lived happily ever after for 3 months. And that's like the last thing that happens in the movie. It's like,
yeah.
So you made me sit through all this and then they don't even get together? Go
Yeah.
fuck yourself.
Yeah,
You know?
that made me really angry because like
It made me
maybe
so
in a-
angry.
maybe in another movie I'd think that was a brave choice for like not making the characters end up together forever. But in this movie,
Right.
it just made me so angry that I sat through all of this bullshit for nothing. It was a
Well,
waste of time.
I was still angry regardless.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was already angry, but I was like even angrier that it wasn't even like
Well, it
he
was
did
just
this
cheap.
for any.
It's just cheap.
as-
It is cheap, right?
Right.
Completely agree with you, Evan, that in a better movie, a better written movie, it would have been a brave choice. Because I always like it when a movie ends, a romantic movie ends, and they don't get together. I also like it when they do. It depends. It depends on how the story unfolds. But like you guys have said, we know nothing about Milo and Wendy, and they have. I think this. I know we've said it, but I cannot believe two people have less chemistry. Like it's just unbelievable how little chemistry they have. And yeah, they don't have witty banter, but I think the film thinks it has witty banter,
Yeah.
Yes.
but it doesn't.
Mhm.
And everything is just cloying and grating, and it treads every single rom-com cliche and trope, and not in a meta way or in a way that deconstructs the genre or provides a commentary on dating. Like, I mean, it's clearly pulling in all these things. Like the dating app is the meet cute, just like in a rom-com is a meet cute, and talks about the grand romantic gesture, but it doesn't really do anything with these things. It doesn't
No.
say anything interesting.
No.
And it has a
No.
wildly intrusive and annoying score.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you for mentioning that because that also
You're welcome.
bothered the shit out of me. In so many scenes, it was so intrusive and just didn't match the tone of the movie. Like, especially in the opening credits where you're seeing like these paintings of New York and you're getting this like storybook style, like
Mhm.
title card and intro. I'm like, what movie is this? Like, it's selling itself as like this millennial rom-com that's supposed to be, you know, kind of like edgy, but it's got like all the worst qualities I feel like of like a student film you see,
Ooh,
Yeah.
plus
ouch.
like an indie that thinks with like a chip on its shoulder that thinks it's being much edgier than it actually, like to your point, like it thinks that the dialogue is witty, but it's
Mhm.
not.
Mm-mm. Yeah. I also don't understand why Wendy had a dual role. Her doppelganger.
Oh, I don't even remember that. What was that?
Yeah. Her ex, I can't think of
Right.
his name, but he's great in Broad City. And,
Oh, I love
and
him.
that's,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing too is I'm watching and I'm like, so I know a lot of the people in this film are comedians. Like Jabuki Young White is a comedian, and I've never seen his work, so I'm not really familiar with him. So I was like, maybe is the script just bad? Are these people bad actors? Both. I don't know. But that guy is great, and he's so funny on Broad City, and I love him.
Yeah.
And
Arturo Castro.
Thank you. Yes. And he's not good here. So I'm like, okay, it's not him because he's talented. So
Yes.
it's clearly the film, unfortunately. But yeah, but his girlfriend, fiance, whomever,
Looks exactly like her.
it's played by the same actress who plays Wendy. Yeah. And I'm like, why? Like, this is just dumb. Like, why? Like, I don't know. And and there also is, I don't know if you guys notice this, but I did, and because I read about Jonah Feingold, it stuck out to me. But there is a Hook reference in the film.
Yeah, I noticed the Hook reference, but I don't.
Yeah, about Rufio, and that's because he did a film with the actor who plays Rufio about like a spin-off of it or something. And I'm like, that's an
I
interesting
see.
Easter egg, but okay.
So he's referencing his own work.
Yes.
Nice.
Gotcha.
Sign of a true artist.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I oh my god, I feel like I've seen Arturo Castro and other stuff. Like, remember the Broken Hearts Gallery, another rom com that I did not love, but I liked.
we didn't like it either.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't like it. It was terrible.
No, we also crapped on it during this show, but I thought he was great in it. I enjoyed seeing him in it.
He's always great. He's a delight, and he's so talented. And yeah, and I'm like, if you're gonna squander his talent, like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Also, don't cast Turtle from Entourage. Just don't do that.
He's a producer on this film too.
Well, then cast him because he's a producer, but then cut him out and be like, sorry, Jerry, the movie was just running too long. So, I mean, I feel bad being this flippant about it, but I just...
I went into this wanting to like it like any other movie that I watch, and I was just so agitated by so many aspects of it. Like I really didn't want to sound so mean, but I just feel like as I've talked about it, I just keep thinking of more things that like really rubbed me the wrong way about it.
Hey, at least it was you this week and not me. I mean,
well, and the thing is too, like we watch movies, for a living. Basically, we watch movies all the time, and so I feel like when you see something that's just so grating, it's just so agitating because like I could have literally been watching anything else right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hated this. Like I hated this with 1,000 burning suns. And like,
if I recall, I sent you both a text. It was like,
you did.
I'm sorry.
You apologized. You apologized preemptively. And as soon as I got that, I was like, oh, fuck no. Because I hadn't seen it yet. I was like, no. But yeah, like I love rom-coms. I love the genre. And I know you do too, Dave. And like, I know we both each love some bad ones too. But like, this is just not entertaining bad. It's just bad. And it just, it pissed me off. It made me sad. In all the very, very, very wrong ways.
Yeah. This is
also the other thing I wanted to say too is that I will say I appreciate that we have an interracial couple. Like that's always great. But there is no queerness whatsoever in this film. And considering that more and more people, especially that this is a film that's really centering itself as a millennial love story. More and more people are, and I would argue it's not even millennial. I think it's even younger than that.
Gen Zs.
Right. But it calls itself a millennial love story. But no, I agree. It's completely Gen Z. But since more and more people are identifying as queer, it's weird to me that there are no queer characters in this. And also doubly weird is because Jabuki Young White is a queer person, like an out queer person. So that's even more weird.
Yeah.
Yep.
And not that queer people can't play straight characters because they absolutely can and should. But it's weird in a movie about New York, which is an incredibly diverse place, that we're not going to be inclusive here. It's just strange. It's so strange. I don't know. It was also really weird to me that the wedding, there were no Jewish elements because I'm like,
thank you.
I very much got the vibe that they were Jewish.
Yes. I mean, at least Jesse as a character seemed very coded to be Jewish. So like, I don't know about Hank, maybe question mark, but yeah, it was very strange that nothing about their wedding was remotely Jewish. And I'm glad you pointed that out too, because that was something when we were watching it, we're like, what?
Maybe.
Yeah, that was very weird.
Maybe they didn't have the money for the chuppah. I mean, who knows?
They can break the glass. It's not hard.
You know how expensive a glass is, Evan? That's the production budget alone.
Some people, Dave, they literally put a light bulb in when they smash the glass, they smash a light bulb. So
I'm playing devil's advocate because I think it's funny, not because I disagree with you.
No, I know. I'm giving you a hard time back.
It just was like, it was just so weird. It's like the lack of diversity was so weird. I was like, I don't get it.
And also it was weird to have Alex Moffat show up and not be funny. I mean, Alex Moffat's funny.
Alex Moffat. Why do I know who that is?
He's on Saturday Night Live and he plays the boyfriend who's, what is he doing to her? He's kind of like, he never has time for her. Is that the
that
gag?
guy. Yeah, he was so not funny.
Yeah. Well, none of it was funny.
But no one is in this film except for maybe Jesse.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's dating in New York. Anybody want to say anything else before we move on?
No, I feel like I've said enough.
Okay.
Oh
well, holy shit. So, moving on then to James Wan's Malignant. This is supposedly his big return to horror. I would not call this horror, but that's just me.
What?
It's fucking bonkers. Don't get me wrong. And it's kind of like Basket Case, but nothing about this was, quote, frightening, unquote, to me in a horrific sort of way.
But that's not what the definition of horror is.
Well, that's okay. We can disagree about it. That's fine. Let's
and we do and will.
Yeah. So let's just do the one sentence IMDb. Madison is paralyzed by shocking visions of grisly murders, and her torment worsens as she discovers that these waking dreams are, in fact, terrifying realities. That is true.
That's a spoiler.
Yeah. That actually
is a spoiler.
Not that I have a problem with that because of our show, but maybe don't do that in the plot summary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a great idea.
Yeah, so I thought this was, I had fun with this. I thought it was kind of a hoot, but it didn't scare me for a moment. And it sort of turned into this weird action movie at the end. Because you've got, would we say Madison or would we say it's Gabriel at that point? We should explain this a little more. But Gabriel, who's like in the third act, is just parkouring all over the place and killing the shit out of everyone with the trophy that he has fashioned into a blade. Anyway.
Right. So, yeah, this is a movie that definitely, I'm glad we're on spoiler piece here to talk about it, because I don't really know how you dig into some of the finer points of it without kind of getting into spoiler territory. So Madison is pregnant. She's married to this abusive fuck who he pushes her into a wall, and like she hits her head and she's like bleeding from the head. And then like this dark figure just comes into her house and horrifically murders her husband.
Yeah.
In a much deserved way. Yes. In a much deserved.
We forgot about the pre-credit sequence though.
Oh, that's true. So it's like 1993. It's at a hospital, like what is it called? Simeon Hospital. That's like
a research hospital.
Yeah, it's like a research hospital. And there's this patient who's gotten loose named Gabriel, and we find out through the doctor's recordings that he's becoming more powerful, and he's definitely like able to control the electricity, and he's murdered several people by the time she gets there to put like a tranquilizer in him, and they strap him down, and we see this like fuzzy image of him grossly flailing through like a plastic sheet or something.
Time to cut out the cancer.
Yes. And then we get like an opening credit montage of like
kind of credit sequence.
Yeah, with like gross surgery happening and all kinds of other little dribs and drabs about the story, which I forget what other movie we were talking about. Oh, we were talking about how I liked that in Drag Me to Hell. They had that kind of opening where you're getting like bits of the story, and I liked that here too, even though there were lots of gross icky like operation scenes kind of cut into these like doctor's files.
Yeah
it was great.
And so
I dug it.
Then back to your point where you were earlier, in the house, the bashing of the head, the dead husband by a dark figure, and then Gabriel shows up. How's Gabriel even? Just starts killing people, and Madison has these visions where she's in
really cool too.
Yeah,
the way it's done.
This very cool CGI thing where it takes her from her house to the victim's house or place of residence or whatever, and then she's just kind of stuck there watching Gabriel commit these murders. And Gabriel, by the way, has told her, by the way, Madison, I'm going to be committing these murders. Through the radio or through some, I don't remember how, but
that's
through the electricity.
He can talk. Yeah, he can talk through the radio, but otherwise he can't speak, right? That's the gimmick.
And then that's what happens. Gabriel starts offing all of the people who all the doctors who worked on his case at the hospital. And Madison says, hey, I was adopted when I was 8, to her younger sister, who's like, you were adopted? That's crazy. But we look so much alike. They don't look anything alike. They do some detective work, and they find out that basically Gabriel was a parasitic twin growing out of Madison's brain.
Yeah.
But we don't learn that until very, very late in the film.
Very, very late in the movie. So yeah, you're like, there's all kinds of weird stuff. Like there's this woman who's working at like doing underground tours of Seattle. This movie takes place in Seattle. She's like, here's the old city down here. And she gets kidnapped by Gabriel. And you're like, oh my God, he's got this woman like chained up in this weird attic-y crawl space kind of place, which I had initially assumed was somewhere in the underground Seattle. Like maybe Gabriel had found this like place where he could hide, because there's like later a chase scene where the cop chases him down there. But then we find out, no, that's Madison's attic. He's been holding this woman hostage in Madison's attic, and she falls through the floor like 2 stories and lands on the coffee table at Madison's house while the police are there. And they're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That was so great. I loved that.
Oh, by the way, that's Evan, as a fan of 80s movies, you know who that was, right? Or who that is.
Jean Louisa Kelly.
Yeah, from Uncle Buck and many other things.
Many things.
Yeah. She looks very different to me as an adult than she did when she was like 16.
Holy
but
shit,
whatever.
I did not realize.
That's also this film ages her up too, because she doesn't look like that.
That's true.
Normally
That's true.
either. Yeah.
And Evan.
I mean, I shouldn't say aging her up because she's supposed to be around the age of 50 and she is 49 in real life, but they're making her look older here.
Plus, she was like tied up and kind of like,
Yes.
so there's,
Right.
who knows?
But we find out that's Madison / Gabriel's biological mother,
Yes.
the woman that's being held captive in the attic.
So it's all kind of wacky. And the murders, this is one of those moments when I really wish that the gore was not CGI, because as cool as some of the effects are with Madison, what happens eventually is Madison gets arrested for all of these murders and put in the holding cell. Is that what you would call it? And
Yes.
Gabriel decides to reveal himself at that moment and comes out the back of her head, because when they cut out the cancer, so to speak, at the beginning of the movie, because they shared a brain, they weren't able to get rid of all of Gabriel, so they basically got rid of Gabriel's body but not his mind.
Right.
And he has been lying dormant there, and Madison has been pregnant 3 times and had 3 miscarriages, because she loses the baby she's carrying at the beginning because of the assault.
Yes.
And her sister theorizes, probably correctly, that Gabriel has been feeding off the energy of these fetuses, and then when you got your head bashed against the wall, that actually gave him a physical opening to come out. Because every time there's one of these murders, she wakes up and she's bleeding from the back of the head where Gabriel resides. And the reason she's bleeding from the back of the head is because Gabriel just like pokes his head out, and she like opens up the back of her skull, and Gabriel's like,
right. And then her arms contort, and she's basically running around backwards. And you see this cloak that Gabriel's been wearing, where her face is kind of covered up in the back. Like you can kind of see her face on the back part of Gabriel. Her eyes are closed, and you can kind of see like just above like the tip of her nose.
And you see Gabriel's face, very brain-esque and very vaginal-esque, and I'm here for it.
Yeah. And then Gabriel just goes on this wild killing spree. And I didn't count how many people Gabriel kills at the police station, but it's a lot.
So many. So everyone in the women's like jail cell, including Zoe Bell, which I thought was a fun appearance. Just totally like ripping his arm through people's bodies, and just like the most gruesome, like he does this thing multiple times where he compound fractures people. He like grabs their wrists and just rips the bones out into their wrists while also breaking them. It's like,
yeah,
and parkour, like much parkour and like gymnastics and all kinds of just craziness, killing cops left and right in the police station. And the one time I said to myself, I actually want the cops to take out the M16s. Like where are the like where's the heavy artillery that we know they have stashed in this police station? Because pistols and shotguns are just not doing it with Gabriel here.
Yeah, Gabriel's too advanced for that shit. I do want to say that the second victim, the doctor who lives by the Silver Cup, whatever, you're in there, you're getting ready to go on a trip, or you're putting laundry away, or you're doing some fucking thing. And then the windows open, which you didn't open. And then there's wet footprints on the floor. And all you're going to do is wipe them up with a towel and then be like, fuck it, I'm going to bed. What's wrong with you?
Yeah. But I appreciate that they were showing him, getting ready for bed, and we see him sitting on the edge of the bed, and you think, oh my God, it's Gabriel's going to come from under the bed and grab his feet. And then they just cut to him being asleep in bed and nothing happened, which I really liked that there was that fake
Me
out.
too.
Yeah, there was some like subverting expectations of some of the kills.
Yeah. Also, can we talk about some of the camera work in this movie? Like, there's some really amazing camera work.
Yes.
Like the scene where first of all, she's running up this Madison. It's early in the film when there's this like specter kind of like skulking around her house that she hasn't quite. She knows somebody's there, but she's not sure where, and she's running up the stairs, and the camera's running up the stairs.
Overhead shot.
Then there's the overhead shot where we see basically from the ceiling. We see like her running around the house almost like it's a maze to get upstairs to close the door. And then there's just all kinds of amazing, crazy camera work during the police station scenes where I was just like, wow, this is some amazing camera work, editing, it just what have you. I'm really impressed.
Yeah, I loved all of the I agree with all of that. I loved the monster POV. I loved the overhead shots. I loved the Dutch angles. I loved all of the red throughout. Great little giallo touches. I loved the extreme close-up on Madison's eye. Another little giallo touch. That's the thing. Like, there are so many great giallo touches throughout this, and I love that. And I know that James Wan said in an interview that this was his version of giallo. But yeah, I found the cinematography so striking and so compelling and loved it throughout. From the opening to the end, I thought it was fantastic and so visually striking. And I loved that. So I'm so glad you wanted to talk about that, Evan.
Yeah, I was shocked. I mean, like, I don't expect, like horror movies, there's some like kind of standard stuff that you expect from them, but I don't often expect like really interesting camera work happening all the time.
Yeah. But this looks good. And he's worked on James Wan movies a lot. So, they must have some kind of rhythm, patter, whatever that they do together. But okay, so Megan, let's talk about this idea that this is a horror movie. And I say that you say it's a horror movie, and I'm like, it's not really a horror movie. Why do you think that?
Well, because if I went by the rubric that a horror movie has to be scary, like it has to actually scare me, there wouldn't be any horror movies. Horror movies would not exist.
They don't scare you. That's true.
Right, because they don't, and that's the thing. Like, people talk about like, oh, Jaws is not a horror movie. It 100% is a horror movie. And because it has to do with the way it's scored, it has to do with the way it's shot, of course, and there are all these elements. But the big thing is, are the characters in the film, are they terrified? And Madison is fucking scared shitless. And so I think that is another core element as to why this is a horror. I think there are lots of reasons. I think the cinematography, all of those touches, it's shot like a horror film. And yes, of course it does. With the parkour, definitely devolves into action. I think it's action horror. All of the gore. I think the score is a horror score. Like, there's so many genre elements here, but also the fact that Madison is absolutely terrified, first from her abusive husband. And I do think it's interesting that horror is, and this is not new per se, but we're seeing a lot of films recently in the horror genre really confront head on domestic abuse, which is really interesting. And of course, obviously very tragic and awful to see, of course. But still a necessary social issue to confront. But I think she's terrified from that, and she's terrified by Gabriel. And so, I absolutely think this is horror. I don't know how you don't classify this as horror.
Well, I would classify it as like a psychological thriller that becomes an action movie, or a police procedural that becomes an action movie.
So I feel like there's two things I want to talk about in this discussion. One, I do agree with you, Megan. This is a horror movie. I think all the aforementioned reasons. I think there's a combination of both physical and psychological horror going on in here. I see it as horror, not necessarily a thriller, though it is thrilling and it is action packed.
Yes.
I would, for me, when I'm looking at horror movies, I do think about whether they're scary in terms of like my overall grading. Obviously, it's not like the critical point of like how scared was I, because like we see enough of these movies that like even if you're kind of a scaredy cat, like you're not going to be scared by everything all the time. But it is a consideration for me when I'm thinking about a horror movie. Like, is it effective in being a horror movie? Like, not necessarily did it always scare me, but like, was it creepy? Was it gross? Was it? and also, did it maybe scare me? Sometimes it does. Like, I think we were talking about, was it Wreck? We talked about that a while back.
Yes.
And that movie did scare me.
I could see that being a scary movie. Yeah. That's an intense one. But But I mean, I think the lines can get so blurred, and I think, psychological thriller, Dave, what you're calling a psychological thriller, I probably would call a horror film. I'd probably call a psychological horror.
Sure.
So, so.
I think we're both right. I mean, I think that.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
We are both right. I like that.
Just, to me, its emphasis was more on like, this is fucking crazy, which to me is not really a horror movie thing, So,
I think there are lots of horror movies that capitalize on the bonkers nature of what's happening.
Well, certainly in lower budget horror for sure. But
But that's the brilliance of this, I think. I think because it is so wacky, like a low budget horror, but it
has
like
some
a
money.
very slick, sharp horror film. Right. And that's what I think is so great about it. Also, we haven't even talked about this, but I have to say, Amanda Wallis's performance, I think, is outstanding. I think she was great in the lead.
Yeah. I think she was really good.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I like the sister too. Just like being
the sister's good too.
I mean, you shouldn't go to the fucking deserted hospital at night. Like, what the hell are you doing? But at least
I could not believe that she was going to, and she parks her car at the edge of the cliff. Like, who does that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to park my car here at the edge of the cliff.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be totally fine. And it was.
Yeah, because then they cut to the next scene where she's brought all the materials home and she's watching them with her mom. They're Madison's adopted mother. Also, I'm gonna add, I love that her mom refers to the hospital people as, quote, lying cock knockers. I think that is a great line of dialogue.
Yeah.
I want my mom to refer to people as lying cock knockers. It was hilarious.
And they also do a good job of showing how Gabriel tried to exist for the longest time, but Madison eventually shut him out with her parents just being like, no, this is just your imaginary friend, whatever. And then when Madison's sister is born, she's like, oh, I have a sister. And then Gabriel just kind of like fades into the background, except not before trying to, stab mom in the stomach. But that's a whole different,
Yikes.
When that was happening, that flashback scene where Gabriel's telling her, oh yeah, go cut a piece of the cake for for mom. It'll be awesome. She'll love it. And then, so she's about to cut the piece of the cake, and then it, reveals what she's really doing, which is she's about to slice her mother in the stomach. And her mom wakes up, and then Madison's like, oh my God. She drops the knife. And that's the point when you say, my child needs help. But
yeah, I'm shocked that there wasn't therapy involved there. I thought that would have been a logical conclusion, that they would try therapy to try and help her with this issue.
Oh, well.
Speaking of the therapy, I just want to say that I know I'm analyzing this a bit too much, but like hypnosis doesn't often work in the way that the film shows it working.
Right.
Yeah, but I know that I'm quibbling, the plot here, and I probably shouldn't because it is so wild.
Yeah. Also
unbelievable in many ways, but yeah.
Also nice to see Paula Marshall in that role, who I haven't seen very much. I mean, she's in a shitload of stuff, but what I always remember from her is Seinfeld, where she's the NYU reporter. But any spray, I wanted to get back to why I didn't think this was horrific real quick. Because James Wan has made so many horror movies, and The Conjuring, for example, and The Conjuring 2. I mean, there are jump scares in those movies, but those movies also have like slow burn horror in them. Whereas this movie kind of relies on jump scares, especially in the beginning with like the shadow figure. And I'm just kind of like, well, James Wan, you've done this better. So I'll call this a psychological thriller that becomes action. So I want to cut James Wan a break is what I'm saying.
See, I didn't think there were jump scares in this.
Yeah, there's one like when
there are a couple.
There's a couple like when
I clearly was immune to them.
Yeah. Well, when the husband is sleeping on the sofa and then he goes into the kitchen, then he comes back and Gabriel is sitting on the sofa, and then Gabriel's gone, and then Gabriel pops up behind him, and there's like the dun, the score.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I just didn't think. I don't know. That's so funny. I didn't think of those as jump scares. No, you're right. Yeah. I just didn't. Yeah, that's funny.
But overall, I had a blast with this. It was just so.
It's so much fun.
And I like that, like it takes itself seriously, but it's not like super
But it also
serious.
doesn't?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like, look, I'm going to take this seriously because I'm a serious filmmaker, but I understand that this is outrageous, you know?
Right. We are well aware of how bonkers this story is, and we're just going to embrace all of its wacky elements in a way that just I don't know. I saw some people on Twitter not liking this movie, and I'm like, I don't get it.
Oh, there's a divide.
Yeah, this is
Like,
a split down the middle.
it. I really don't. It's just you say a lot of things, but I found this movie insanely fun to watch.
Very entertaining.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's doing well with critics, but like audiences seem to be kind of like yes or no, like no,
Right.
like oh, it was fine, just no middle ground.
I also want to talk about because we talked about it a little bit, but since we talked earlier about how it goes into full core like action with the parkour and everything, I also think it's fascinating the puppetry that was done with Gabriel and Madison's body and along with the stunt work. And I just think I think it was so well done and so visually interesting. It was just great. And I was like, there are a lot of action movies that could learn a lot from these scenes here. So
You mean where you can actually see things that are going on? Like,
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which again goes to show what great editing and cinematography will do for your film.
Yeah. American action movies especially are really bad about the like, let's do lots of shaky cam and jarring cuts during action scenes. And it's like, it's so much better when you can see it.
Yeah.
Like, I want to see them have the fight.
Especially when shit takes place at night. I really need to be able to see what's going on and not worrying about where my eye line is, you know?
Yes. Thank you.
Anyway.
Yeah, but this was so much fun.
Yeah, for sure. It did leave a few plot threads dangling. Like you're not sure if Kakoa died with the thing through the shoulder, I guess. It's kind of where it goes. Looks like it could have gotten him in the heart, though. That trophy that gets turned into a blade. And I was disappointed. I mean, I was disappointed when the sister got shot in the head, but then I was also disappointed that it didn't actually happen because I was like, okay. Because you see Madison starting to take over control of her body from Gabriel, which is kind of like the whole thing. And then she, the sister's not dead because she's prevented Gabriel from shooting her. And okay.
Right.
And then it's got that cute sort of like buzzing thing right before the closing credits on that light.
You mean when the sister and the biological mom, they're all like sitting there like embracing each other like, oh, thank God that's over. Yeah.
Well, but Madison did say that she knew she couldn't keep him at bay forever. So to me, that was very much a nod to, you're going to be back.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, my thought was Andy Samberg from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Cool. Still murder, though. Like she's still, whether she was in control of her body or not, murdered so many people and will face the consequences for that in some capacity. I'm certain.
But then Gabriel's going to here's the sequel, Malignant 2. She's going to be in prison and Gabriel's like, I'm getting out. And that's Gabriel's going to murder a bunch of people in the prison. So
your Gabriel voice was amazing.
Thank
Dave.
You. I can only do it spontaneously. I can't think about it in advance.
Maybe we'll get a reappearance of Gabriel's voice
when they make Malignant 2. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, does anybody have anything they want to add to Malignant? But I was going to say Malignant 2 to Malignant before we wrap it up.
Just that I think this is so much fun and so fantastic. I had such a blast with it.
Yeah. How about you, Evan?
Yeah, same. I mean, just so much fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was watching this Sunday night and I was like, oh no, horror movie and it's dark outside. And then I was like, this is a hoot, man. No.
Oh my God, I watched it Sunday night too.
Yeah. So.
I was like, I'm going to wait till it's dark out and turn all the lights off. It was great.
Well, everybody, I think we'll do our recap here. I think we'll just go ahead and get Malignant out of the way. I think that's see it all around from all of us, right?
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And you can see that in theaters and HBO Max.
Yes. That is true. My name is Pauli Murray. Comes out in theaters today. Select theaters here in Boston. It's at, or Brookline, I should say. It's at the Coolidge, and it will be on demand starting October 1st. Evan, my name is Pauli Murray.
Yeah, of course, see it.
Yeah, me too. I'm on.
Did I not make that clear earlier?
No, you did. Well, we always recap though. I mean, come on.
Yeah. No.
And then
I'll say see it too, even though I didn't see it yet.
And it's an Amazon film, so I'm imagining it will be on Amazon at some point.
Yeah, it'll be on Amazon October 1st.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and then Dating in New York. No.
Oh no.
I mean, that's on demand, but don't demand it. I mean,
No.
I wanted to ghost the movie, to borrow a dating term.
Exactly. And that is it for this week's Spoiler Piece Theater. If you forgot at the beginning, we said, hey, over on our Patreon, we discussed Pirate Radio, written and directed by Richard Curtis. If you're a patron, please go check it out. If you're not a patron, please consider becoming one. We told you where all the movies are. So now I want to say, hey, Otto, thank you for being our editor so much.
Thanks, Otto.
You are the best.
Thank you, Otto.
Yeah, you're the best, Otto Clamor. You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts. You can find us at our website, spoilerpiece.com. Our social medias are Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook, and we're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And then you can email us at spoilerpiece@gmail.com if you want to get in touch with us and tell us, actually, dating in New York was totally my dating experience and it resonated. And we will tell you you're wrong, but you could do that. You could email us and tell us that. Or you can give us a call.
At 862-21-PEACE.
Leave us a voicemail and let us know that we were wrong about Malignant, because there are people out there who feel that way. There you go. And if you like the show, please rate and review us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. And if you really, really like the show, like I said about 2 minutes ago, please consider joining our Patreon. We talked about Pirate Radio. And that is the show. My name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Dave Sees Movies.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter, Letterboxd, and Instagram as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionessWorld and on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinioness.
And we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.